Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in another session of JSET. We are really glad to be here with you today. So JSET is a space that began in 2023 with the goal of being transdisciplinary community of praxis focused on addressing social ecological challenges through collaboration, research, and education in Latin America. We are exploring different experiences and approaches that address those environmental challenges across CSU, other universities, and different organizations. Today, we are really glad to welcome Carlos Hugo Rocha. He's an agricultural engineer and master in soil sciences at the Federal University of Paraná and a PhD in human dimensions of natural resources here at Colorado State University. He is an adjunct professor at State University of Punta Grossa, where he has worked since 1991, teaching, researching, and outreaching on the following things: nature, conservation, landscape ecology, campus life, sustainable rural development, family-based agriculture, agroecology, and agroecological production systems. And also, he's a visiting researcher in the Center for Protection Area Management. So, Hugo, thank you so much for being here, and we are ready to hear your thoughts.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here to share some our work we developed in the last almost 20 years. We have really worked with in that direction. And we learned something while doing that. And it's not my main concern about coming to CSU. In my project now, I'm trying to work with the National Park in Brazil because that I'm in the Center for Protecting and Management. But concerning the objectives and the subjects that we've been talking on this seminar, I found to be more useful to share these ideas because it's something that I think in some way we are looking for in our work, in our presentations, and because that I choose this subject. The idea of improving or trying to make some transformations in the landscape. And our focus was with small farmers in Brazil during this time. So I will just outline what I'm going to present. Now I will just go to some conceptual ideas. I will try to make a big picture. I think this will help us understand what we're talking about, where we are and where we want to go, and our methodology, our actual research methodology in order to improve or make these transformations in the landscape. Well, perhaps landscape is the most relevant concept in ecology and sustainability science. I think is the idea of landscape is really important. The agricultural landscapes in countries like in parts of Brazil, like in southern Brazil, is a critical conservation issue we have to work in order to move towards conservation and sustainability, and particularly addressing my view with the family farming systems. So the idea of landscape, the realm, the interface between nature and culture, and the way that we use to study to understand those landscapes is really related to our culture, even our science is trying to understand the biosphere or geosphere, but it's still cultural component. And this, and this are also the people in general trying to understand the landscape and how to make something about that, make money, plant trees or to farm land. The culture, it's impressive. It's really impressive that how the culture changed landscapes sometimes in the similar nature conditions, but just different cultures find that places in those regions make a huge difference in the landscape. And we can see it, of course, in the landscape, but also analyzing satellite images. And the way that perception makes us to change the landscapes. That's how we change. It's because our values, what we need to take from that land, and these things are changing. And the idea of protection or sustainability is reflections on those understand what we're saying. And well, the important thing is related to the scale. We can talk about local scale, regional scale, national level, or global level, and we can applied the idea of landscape in this landscape. So our main point is how to address conservation in regions that are densely occupied by economic activities, where protected areas are insufficient, and there is a lack of human and financial resource to prevent expropriation, monitoring, and enforcement of legislation. So this is the main point about the changes of park service in Brazil, because there is no money, there is no enough financial resources, and most of our protected areas in Brazil are private only yet. So now they are waiting for the land to be expropriated and incorporated to the public land as to the public land, but it has taken decades to launch just a little. So most protected areas in southern Brazil are in those situations. So we need some different perspective. We need to be pragmatic. We need to get practices. How can we work in the landscape in order to make conservation now or as soon as possible? Because it's not possible that in the past when we should be working like 12 years ago in order to have that conserved during this time. So now we have how to motivate the communities in order to integrate resource management. But in general, there are no incentives. There are no tangible incentives for the population or any type of farmers to be involved with conservation. And so this is the challenge. And of course, as I said before, is a critical role also in conservation is just farming landscapes. Our focus is with the family farming systems. It's very diverse in Brazil, diverse of production, because it was a matter of being invited by some communities to participate if they share knowledge with them in order to improve their landscapes and their lives. The idea of sustainability is taken very easily. It's well, how can we improve some conditions in landscapes? Can be done, even in small scale. And then we are going to learn from that. And learning from that, we can move forward to larger scales. And we have to, of course, to have a scientific approach, how to measure, compare, but that gives us research at infinity. It's important. It's our compass to know where we are heading to, but we have also to do this work in landscapes happening. The transformation is, well, improving self-reliance and socio-ecological functional landscapes. Is what can be done. And the idea of working together through the dialogue of knowledge, or dialogue with the saberes and in Spanish, it's also an important component in this. Brazil is a huge complex to draw the big picture. And this makes it very challenging because any policies at federal level are kind of trying to reach the whole country, but the country is so different. So we have to develop local policies that are adapted to the different realities of the country. Most of the population in Brazil is located along the coast, like no more than 200 kilometers from the coast, like myself, our university, where I live. We are like exactly 200 kilometers from the coast, and most of the population is spread in those regions. And we have this historic in Brazil, like São Paulo, perhaps one of the most hard cities in the world to live in. Real with his challenges and his brilliant beauties, but also some isolated people in the Amazon that are very scarce, and some have still no contact with civilization till now. We have in Brazil there are, we can just generalize in those types of vegetations: the Amazon, savanna, the Cerrado, the northeast, the drylands of Brazil, and the Atlantic rainforest, and the southern two smaller biomes, the pampas, the grasslands of southern Brazil, and the wetlands in the region of the west part of Brazil. High levels of biodiversity is no new for. Everyone's know that. But also this diversity of landscapes make a diversity of life and diversity of cultures and makes our responsibility as Brazilian as scientists to work to improve and to take care of help take care of those landscapes. Different landscapes. I chose the top image for Andrea. Yeah, she has been there. And that makes the country interesting. And we have some, well, we are in Colorado. There is the Sierra also along the coast of Brazil, just to bring the idea of Colorado to the presentation. And the tropical, the rainforest, the Atlantic rainforest is the most diversity, one of the hotspots in the world. It has impressed young Darwin when he visits 2 times just in the beginning of his voyage, his trip around the world, and by the end. So he was impressed by what he saw there. He has been to some pristine forest in the Atlantic rainforest that time. And as you remember, the distributed along the coast is not uniform. There are different Atlantic rainforest along the coast and in different altitudes, so make that very diverse. But you remember this image about the density demographic in Brazil. Most of the population was developed under those landscapes. So it's a challenge much more difficult to construct because that's where most of the economy has developed in the country. Brazil became one of the most important economies in the world. It was in 2012, it was the seventh economy. We are happy that time, but we didn't know because there was some struggles after that. And we can see the growing of the gross domestic product during the 2012. So particularly after 2002, it was the best time in the Brazilian history, Brazilian economy, and there was a lot of change. And so we were a lot of opportunities for poor people, for the middle class, for the country, for even for conservation. It was nice. We can see this comparative with the Amazon. The deforestation of the Amazon has is low that time, or we can see the same information also showing how it falls during those times. It has growing. It started growing again after that, but it was policies that the country adopted that makes things be in the right direction. But even with the growing economy, the disparity still is important in Brazil. It's image in the real, most of the richest people just besides the poorest. And this is São Paulo, perhaps even more significant. How the difference of the country is between the richest and the poorest. And Brazil, sadly, is still one of the most unequal countries in the world. We know that in the United States there is inequality, but it's much worse. Only some countries in Africa has a lowest income distribution than Brazil. This is also interesting. This graph, I will just address this one. We can take a lot of information, just seeing the Gini index, how it changed since the 80s. And this is more or less my professional life. In blue, the blue line there. We have been seeing the slowly decreasing of the inequalities. The improvements in economy, but also more opportunities for people in general to have more opportunities to have access to food and to travel and to school and etc. And the green part, the green line is the best time of Brazil, as I said before, so that the decreasing in inequality was stronger, the economy was much better. But that is the yellow line, and after we can see the whole improvements during the 4 years, just changing 2 years just after the COVID, the pandemic. because the changes in the policies and how everything becomes reach the same level as 40 years ago. So it's a bit sad to to see that, to see the old improvements that was slowly happening and how it's changed so fast. When you compare to the United States, income, this is data is from 2010, but when we saw that Brazil is much worse, just 1% of the population has 68% of the wealth. So there is a lot of power, political power associated with this distribution. So it's much more difficult to address conservation and the old issues in the country. I put my back in Rica, perhaps the best of the governments in South America during those times. From Uruguay, he said something that's important. We, as the left governments, just make people gave opportunities to people to have access to food, to consume, but not to engage them in citizenship. How to keep that, how to make them to be empowered to have the right decisions. One of this history could be synthesized into two economist cohorts. The first one in 2009, when everything seems to be pretty good, the economy was so nice, it was so nice to live in Brazil. Perhaps to visit Brazil also was good too, and everyone was happier. But a few years ago, they just anticipate what will happen in the country where the problem is. So, the economy of Brazil is strictly dependent of the first sector, and farming has something like 35% of responsible for 35% of the economy, and those led to the transformation of those biomes of Brazil. We can here see how the agricultural use and how they spread during these times, and still spreading towards the older biomes of Brazil first, and the Atlantic forest after to Cerrado, and then to the Amazonian, to the Amazon, and well, we're converting to this on the left image, huge areas very with a lot of instruments and high productivity, and but also an important component is the family farming research. Something that was somewhat hidden, but of course it's extremely important for the country. As Brazil has two now, has two ministries, one for the large farm systems and the other one for the small farm system. Brazil became, in the 21st century, one of the main exporters of commodities. And this is, of course, important for the economy of the country. But it's not uniform. There is different components of this farm system. You can see the intensive farming mostly in the central part of Brazil, but also the southern part, but also small families and pasture lands and the most extensive pasture lands and the forest and extractive in the Amazon. This graph is also important. It shows the right one, the amount of area planted from the bars in blue. It grows, but it doesn't grow a lot. The main difference was the increase of productivity on those lands, particularly during this time. But that has been changed after that, as we can see in the left graph. The main point here is the idea that there is a lot of investment in technology, and this technology helped to increase the production without transform too much land. But as the demand for the grains and particular soybeans increasing more, so it increased the deforestation and linked to the deforestation of well, Cerrado and Southern region. So there's a typical images of the Cerrado farming, but there is a price to that. The use of pesticides perhaps is the most dramatic um, dramatic component of this process. Brazil is one of the huge markets, in part because it's a tropical country, but also because there is, in some places, there's 3 crops a year. So so mostly are 2 crops a year, but in some places they can have some three crops. So they use more per hectare, and because it's tropical land, but also because there is a lot of pressure and incentives for doing that. You don't pay VAT tax for pesticides. If you're going to buy medicines or food, you pay a lot of VAT. And if you buy pesticides, depending on the state, you have by law 60% a reduction of the tax, or in some states it's 100%. So this is not ideal policy that a country should take in order to incentivize agriculture. This is state of Paraná, and the distribution of the use of pesticides, so it can reach up to 14 kilos per hectare per year in some region of the state. And it's different when we have technology for spraying, then we can see in small farmers, and even the protections, the equipment for protection, the person is not feasible because it's too hot. He's not going to be able to spray pesticides during summer days because it's too hot. So they will spray more like that. Of course, there are consequences for that. One of them is the intoxication of farmers. This is done to that level. But we can see in the right image in Paraná is one of the most states with those contamination, but it's because there is a reasonable good monitoring of that. All these policies instituted in the 80s and still working. They can track any people getting to the hospital, and so it makes a good monitoring of those cases. In the other countries, the other states, there is no such efficient monitoring of the farms. And of course, there will be contamination of the water. And 1,300 cities, only 14% of the sample, there was no pesticide in the water. And of course, the foods are likely to have some results of pesticides. This is changing year by year, but it's a reality of Brazil. This is the contamination of the water by cities in the states. And of course, this will lead to a more complex case of cancer and other health problems linked to the pesticides. Why that? Why this appetite for risk pesticides? We can see, comparing the graphs up in the United States, uses more or less steadily until 2007 compared to Brazil 2013. And there is a huge growing market there. We can also see that increasing consumption of pesticides, also fertilizers to improve those productivity. And there is the companies pushing the pesticide agenda. This exemption of tax is one of the examples in order to that you make people use that because it's ready. They have the money from the bank, the credit to buy, and they can get a lower price for that. The large companies that dominate the seeds and the pesticides are increasing, and they have been buying the smaller companies in the last 25 years. There are a few companies that dominate all this global market of pesticides and fertilizers. And so it's hard to change that. Um, the other problem is soil erosion. You can see those images in Panama, and even the forest and the river, you can see the color of the water there. And as consequence of the soil impoverishment and erosion as a consequence, and even in Boston Falls, you can see the color of the water and see how much erosion is going to erode this watershed. And sometimes the erosion can be so tough and it gets something like this size. So the main point is considering these problems, how to make change for the family farm system. There is no sustainability. There is no possible for a small farming system to improve the quality of the life of their family. Because now this graph is very interesting because it shows us the amount of money for every farmer will take for every dollar sent by food. And it was decreasing along the 20th century. The same data we can see for Europe and will be the same in Brazil. But the point is, you need to do larger and larger farms in order to get to make it profitable or to keep your standard of lives that you had in the past. So it's the instead of publish or perish, you grow or perish in your business and in those farm systems. This led to massive migration in Brazil. Even President Lula, when he was 5 years old, he left the northeast part of Brazil to São Paulo in such kind of transport. And when he moved to São Paulo, and in the state of Paraná, for like 40% of the family-based farms disappeared during this 30 plus years. And this led to massive favorization in Brazil, and most of the violence that we know in Brazil is related to migration. It's the third or fourth generation that went to the larger cities because they have no more possibility to farm the land, and this led to the social and economic problem. And then it's a process that is going on in several countries here in the United States too, but it's particularly important for in the state of Panama. So, as a result, those requirements it's not feasible for the small farm. Well, there is low jobs in the farms, there is little land concentration, and also concentration of economy and political power. The Congress of Brazil is very conservative, much more conservative than it was in the past. They have the power, and even the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff was related to that. They have the power, they have the majority, and she was fired. Even though she has no problem, and this was resumed again by the economists later for what happened. And during the COVID, it was also very hard for places like the Europe and Paulo and to do. So, well, what can do? What can make for some change to happen? And how to work with family farming because they are important. They are something like 84% of the stuff building properties in Brazil, but they just built sorry. The family base is just 85%, and the but has only a small amount of property. We can see in this table, the land to the 5% bigger farms, it's 70% of the farmland, and for the 50% smaller is just 2.3. So the same reflection of the economic inequality in income is reflected also in the agriculture or the farm systems. Compared to the United States, we can see in this graph comparing small farmers and the amount of land compared to the United States and give an idea about how this happened. The family farm is very important because it's, like 74% of the jobs in the farming sector are related to small farms. It produces 70% of the food, the staple food, everyday food of the population. Produce 40% of the income or the total global production of income in the farming sector. But has only 25% of the land and keeps just 14% of the credit that are available for farming. It's important in some the production of those staple foods, and also even the animal production, milk and dairy, etc. And let's go to the southern part of Brazil. This is Paraná. Some images just to show some propaganda about Paraná. It's a nice place too. The Iguaçu Falls is perhaps the most one of the most known image of Brazil is in the border of our state of Paraguay and Argentina. Sometimes can be cold there, just July of 16 years ago, so it was freezing there. There are sometimes just a bit snow once every 15 years. The vegetation cover, most of the state was covered by forests, three types of forest, diversification of the Atlantic rainforest, and the orange parts are the grasslands are relief, and some image of the pine, Araucaria pine, is a relic from very old genus, and it's still surviving, and that can be some tree in some place, and there is an edible seed that is so it's also a good thing to eat. And some landscapes around. The diversity is high. There is different animals that are in risk of extinction on those regions, and we can see the change in the state from the ending of 18th century, 19th century. More than 9% of the state was natural vegetation, and how it's changed during the 20th century. We can see in the middle image to the right is the Iguaçu National Park and its boundary to the other side of the river. So deforestation is mainly 20th century in order to change those landscapes. And we came back to the idea of how to make changes in this farming system in the state of Pará. So, for the majority of those farms, the intensive production systems was not enough to generate sustainability and well-being. And now, so the technology, the land, the human and financial capital, and the scale of production is not feasible, is incompatible with the small farm systems. And the opportunities in the market for them is scarce, particularly when the peripheral agricultural regions and the residues still continues and mainly affect young people. So how to improve socio-ecological conditions on such landscapes? Well, when we have a good economy in Brazil, there was much more opportunity for making teams and research. So we grow now working with the farmers and learning from them. And there is more demands and more opportunities. And we make a quite, for Brazilian standards, a quite big team of people just to graduate from the university. The majority is limited to the agricultural, they are agronomists mostly, but there are different, they are interdisciplinary team. And integrating information, education, this outreach and research, and try to make research generate from the extension what they need, what is important, what's most important research or the design that we can make, that we can do in the field to help or to make change. I mean, so what? And we adopt now the actual research model of to understand, to have a big picture of what we are, what we need to do, what we can do, and to think together with communities what can be done, what are the priorities, how can we act together in order to make those changes. And after that, well, look again and think again and keep the cycle going on. During those times, we are able to reach 50 municipalities in the state. It's an area almost the size of Belgium, so it was not easy to travel because the roads also are not so good. So it was challenging to reach those municipalities. And the first thing we went to learn, we had to learn from how they survive, how they change, how they are able to not to still being profitable and not left in the land as happened in a large scale in the state. And we start to learn with them how they do and what can in us would offer to work together with them. And we saw interesting things in the field, interesting things in the marketing they do. And the more we get involved with them, we more learn and we more are able to work together and to take decisions in the field to make the transformation to happen in the landscape. The process was growing with more and more people involved, more and more associations and community demanding this type of work. And we reached a point that we were able to develop 7 main initiatives that I will go further each one in the following. First thing was now the basic of land use planning, how to do at that farm level, to improve riparian protection and soil and water conservation, and the strategies for sustainable rural development that you use to make them more profitable as farming. We started using the technology JS and all the information for mapping and planning their land. And the first thing was to understand what was out of the legislation. There is a law for protection of riparian and springs. So what they need to understand that, what is protect, what is necessary to protect to be to have compliance with that legislation. And there was some good results because people just started leaving those fields in order to restore. And where there's pasture lands, the problem was the cows and the cattle going to the river. So we start fencing to improve the riparian routes. And those work was done by a lot of people in partnership with the communities. And also simple things as like protecting their water source. There's a huge problem with the lies during the time. We didn't know that. We start seeing the water, how bad is the water. And then, well, nobody think about that before. So what can be done? And then there is a huge effort just to bring and to help them to have a safe water. But that was also nice because they get confident with us because it was nothing quite cheap to do that. There was not necessarily a lot of money for doing those strategies and protecting the watershed from the water that it came from. And they understand that and they get confident in us and makes our work going smoothly. Same thing for treatment of sanitation of cows and using old tires for doing that. And sometimes there was a lot of people involved, and it was nice to see the community getting together and working together to make those things happen. And every time they after the work they had some celebration for that. Some initiatives in soil conservation and land management in order to avoid erosion, and some people things to help to restore the more serious erosion. And well, this is the protection and creating the basis for improving the land management. The second point was how to increase the income. And the point was agroecology and organic certification. There was some nice experience there from the farmers, and we learned from them, and then we put them together to talk, and they started adopting a large scale. They organized groups of organic in the communities in order to get the participative certification. There was a lot of workshop and trainings on practice of agroecology, and we bring people to see and to understand how things was going on the field. And there is a lot of also training about the law for the organics in order for them to get converted and certified. And also agroforestry initiatives have to make a lot of sense in those climates and its growing activity for land management. And even for yerba mate, this is for the I saw some yerba mate in the previous presentation. And perhaps the most interesting policy in Brazil for the family farm was the school feeding program. This was great because there was some initiatives to enforce or to incentives the schools to buy food directly from the family farm. And this was important for the farmers because they are sure they will get a fair price and they will buy everything up to some level that contract that we have. And whenever the food is that you brought to schools is organic, certified, you got a 30% premium price. So this was also another important policy that makes a lot of difference in the field because they get interested and makes easier our work to do them. And another public policy at state level that was also great is a certified program launched by the state. It's a partnership between seven state universities with some other state institutions in order to give extension, technical training, advising, and the final certification without cost for small farmers. So this was a great combination of now you are able to certify as a group, but they will got a 30% increase on their price. So because that and in this market might increase our work, but together with that, there was now we brought conservation practice because if you need to be certified, you need to change your practice in the field in order to be certified. And this gives income and improve the income of the farmers and help to the organization of new farming groups along the process. And the end of the process now was the certification as they are shown here. This is a sentiment on a land reform settlement that today 90% of the farmers are organic and certified. And another public policy that could be very helpful, the state has made an agreement, trying to get the old school feedings in the state to be 100% organic until 2030. It will be hard to reach that, but anyway, it's a huge incentive that if the state keeps that, we will make a lot of difference. We work also with the landgrass seeds to rescue, to see what they have in the field, how can select to improve their own seeds, not seeds bought in the stores. We discover a lot of interesting cultivars that they respond pretty well to the poor condition of their soils. And the farmers and the groups, they make some fair in order to exchange those seeds between them. And some of this fair are really huge, and a lot of people participate, and they have workshops discussing those components. Another component was the landscape, the pasture lands, how to improve pasture lands, because just knowing the technology, and also to improve the management of the systems at farm level. And the results were quite interesting to see how the better the pasture improves just by managing the cows in the system. And how to plan those systems to bring water and to improve the quality of the pasture and the numbers of animal that can be kept in the same area. Another thing that we had to learn was the family-based small ag industries in order to increase the value of their production, just transforming the products and also helped by the certification of the organic production. Later we discovered the importance of we are always thinking about soils or ecology or fertility, but the commerce, the marketing is the most important. They don't know how to trade. They have no access to markets. Wherever we are able to help them to discover different markets, it makes a lot of main difference. And we learned that takes a while to learn the importance, because we are not traders. But so the farmers are not traders too. And the good traders, they become rich, right? Because they are good traders. So this was the challenge of how to deal with them, how to open these new markets, sometimes bringing consumers together, giving information about farming, putting the farm together with the consumers, and organize, and even making visits to some farms that the consumers and families going to know where their food was put. Sometimes our lab became something like the Trader Joe or something like that, because there was during COVID we need some different approach, and then we help them to organize that. There's some work with women to empower them to understand the clear condition and how can improve and also improve. And basically the idea of bringing the knowledge exchange stories in Portuguese and how the work is synthesized on this image. The main results that I could say is the network of farmers that are almost 900 farmers together. About 50% are already organic certified, and the groups of the farmers and the support cooperative that support those small farmers, and they are somewhat able to work by themselves now. They don't need us anymore. Well, they need the technical, the extension and support and research, but if you are not able to be with them, they will be by themselves, and they are established enough for doing that. We got a lot of opportunities in financing during the rich times of Brazil that helps us to do those jobs. We have no more this amount of financing opportunities. It's very short and became shorter in the last times. But now the idea of the action research must be kept. We have to look, we have to understand, we have to think, we have to act, and we cycle going on in order to make those resolutions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugo, for your insightful presentation. Now we can open just some minutes for comments or questions, also for the people in the Zoom meeting. If you have any question or comment, please feel free to share it. Or here.
No question. What I have a question. I like the work you were able to do there. A really big effort. But I was thinking, if you know, or if in those communities there were some previous way of governance and how you deal with those if they were. So that's
You mean the few, what?
like ways of governance, like a system,
Uh-huh.
how you were able to get like inside of that systems and not
Uh-huh.
modify them.
Uh-huh.
And also the other question I have is if you are thinking on using this organization or how is it working, because you show us first that the main uh, element related to agriculture and the effects
Mhm.
on environment was pesticides, and the
Mhm.
biggest polluters are the big industries. Have you worked on that transition, if not to work to them, to fight them using
Mhm.
these organizations you?
Yeah, this is an important point when we think about the realities of our communities in Latin America. One of the points was that maybe I was not able to emphasize was the community participation. I saw a lot of pictures, but this was the tricky part. But most of the time, have been invited by the communities to work with them. And we started when settlement invited us to help them with they their main product was dairy milk, and well, we don't know nothing about milk, but we can learn about milk production to help them. And from that, there we were because we are able to do some good work with them. Other communities start to work with us, and then things got growing, and there was more opportunity for working with that. Whenever we take a position in a place like where we live, in order to show to the city that the water is contaminated, the food is contaminated, there will be pressure for the, the sellers and for the people that want money, earn money from selling those goods. And they will make a lot of, they can make it very tough for you. So, because we are not teachers, we are at university, so now they will respect more you than if you are a farmer that you are complaining. I was going to show one place, one slide, one professor from University of São Paulo. She synthesized, she put a lot of data on pesticides in Brazil. Some of them I present here, and she was persecuted, she was threatened, she was insulted, more or less like Rachel Carson was back in the 60s. And she was ruined and makes things much more difficult. So sometimes it's hard to deal with those kind of pressures or those kinds of situations. But the farmers, whenever we are able to certify and to increase their profitability by the organic, they will stop using pesticides, at least for the products that they sell as organic. Only, not necessarily for the crops like corn or beans, but whatever, the main point on this is the market. If you find a market for them, or if you're able to develop a market with them, there will be plenty of opportunity to increase the organic action, but also everything good that came together. The soil conservation, the fire conservation, the water protection, and things like that. I'm not sure if it was exactly what we mean, but
Yeah.
we can talk also.
That's it.
I have also a question. You mentioned the interscientific dialogue, as dialogue interscientific at the beginning, right? You mentioned that that was important for the process you conducted. And can you tell us a bit more about how did you engage with these diálogo intercientífico, and maybe in which phase of all the activities you mentioned, because a long process, it was easier to engage in that process to bring local knowledge into your scientific.
Yeah, perfect. Definitely. I think in some way it was more important, the local knowledge, than our scientific knowledge in the process. Because when we often we are able to convince or to deal with a particular farm that will adopt the technology. But it's going to be much easier if you was able to tell their neighbors about what he's doing, why he's doing, and how he's doing, than if we stay talk with them for hours and hours, because they can understand each other. They have the same approach for similar approach for soil for management, and the communication is quite easier. My first work before going to university was the extension service, and I remember now I was just graduated, and it took me perhaps 1 year in order to develop a dialogue with small farmers. So it was very cool community and isolated in the state. But well, we all talk Portuguese, but the way that we are talking is different. The ideas now, our dialogues, our knowledge is different. So it took me a while to understand and how to address with them what I do or what I want or what I'm trying to say to them. And I learned that from other farmers that are kind of quicker to understand, and they start to translate to them what was the main points or what. From that experience 40 years ago, it was a kind of next moment that, oh, that's it. And I learned from that. But one example is the agroecology and organic farm systems. We identified half dozen of those better farms, and we are going to learn from them what they do, how they do, why they do. Everyone has a different history or different approach for being farmers, organic farmers. And then, well, we help them with something like the soil conservation, the water protection, to bring the new technologies or new seeds or to discuss with new different types of management of soil. And well, and also learn from that because they start adopting or parts of some of those things that we are addressing to them, and results in the field make us learn how that can be adopted. And then we are able to bring more farmers to his property for him to speak to them, for him to show them how to do it. And whenever that happened, I'm describing ideal situation, but whenever those things happen, it was the best. I remember it was something that we talked with our team. The less we talk in the meeting with them, the better. Because then they will talk, they will listen to them, and then you can help, particularly some moments. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of found myself wondering a little bit about what the ultimate goals are of the project. And obviously there's with research, it's more about just generating information and understanding, but obviously this also has an extension overlay. So you're looking to do something, change something out on the landscape. And is it trying to keep these farmers on the landscape, prevent them from selling their lands to the larger landowners so that you retain some of this small scale agriculture, or what are those ultimate goals? Because I can also see the research quickly pivoting and say, we should actually probably focus all of our attention on the 75% of the land where all the intensive agriculture is happening. If the ultimate goal is just reduction of pesticide use and getting more organic agriculture, maybe just shifting 1% of the mega producers would be a greater environmental impact, right? Than getting 100% of a small scale, but so is the main overall outcome, this idea
Yeah.
helping support, keeping people on the landscape, working in small farms? You looking to expand the number of people that have small farms to make maybe a better balance between these? Because obviously that's the direction the world is going, unfortunately, right? It's towards a larger corporation owned kind of thing. So what, or do you not have like explicit goals on what you envision for the future?
Well,
Yeah.
Which the nail, I think. I mean, this is an important point. The main point concerning the small farmers is how to make it profitable and then aid for them to be able to stay and to live from, and particularly pass the land to their son. Because as you know, the migration affects women and the young. And the young, they don't want to stay, of course, in farm anymore. It's too hard. They know the life of their dads and their granddads. And also, their dads, their parents don't want they to stay in the farm because it's too tough and there are few opportunities. This is something really, really important about that big picture and you understand the state. One picture that I show concerning the group of youth, people from rural communities was to discuss exactly that. There is opportunity. If you can have a good quality of life, keeping the farms. And the point is how to change the way the land is managed, how to aggregate value to their produce. And there's plenty of opportunities for improve on that. So this was our main motivation in order to work with the small farmers systems in order to that. Nowadays, I'm just no, there are some good people working with the farmers. Yesterday I was still helping them with some projects. But now my challenge is, and one of the reasons I came here is how to address these things in farm system, the conservation system. How can we bring those ideas and those practices and bring the farmers together in order to think together about what can be changed in their lands. It's much more challenging because it's easier to work with small farmers. Whoever work with small farmers know what I'm talking about. But every time we're going to talk with larger farmers, it's completely different. And by many reasons, including political, different values. There are completely different values on these tasks. So, but still, there are opportunities, there are things that could be done together. There are options and alternatives for farming systems, particularly in our cases, grasslands. So there is a lot of examples around about grassland being managed cooperatively and for conservation and the value that can be aggregated in those systems themselves. It will be the key to open dialogues and conservations. So yes, it's still challenging, and our goal is to work with grasslands and the conservation, because if the ICMBio in Brazil buy that land, there are some money that they are going to expropriate some land in that region, but can be hard to, because who will manage that land after? They have no staff, they have no money, they have no enough information to work on that lands. And the lands that are farmed will not become a resident back if just left the ecological section happen. So so the best thing that we can do scientifically is how to address those things with the farmers. And if we stay in the farm and try to change the systems and all the incomes or all the subsidies that we put in the farming can change that for doing other subsidies that we need for conservation. So is the challenge that we are trying to address. There are some, we have some we're in the beginning of the process now, that as we start with the family farmers, there are some good examples because there are places that are, there's some tourist visitation. And so those farmers, we establish some good relationships, and we bring different people from different departments that we are involved with before to work together, and we are seeing some light in the end of the tunnel by doing that. So thanks. It's a very important point.
I have a few questions, but we're kind of out of time. If there are questions in line.
No,
No.
no questions in line. I also have questions, but yeah, I think that I hope that we can have more time later to keep discussing, keep having this important dialogue. So
Thank
Yeah.
you. That was,
Thank you.
that was very thorough and it's very inspiring work. Yeah. Lots to feel proud about. Thank you so much.
Maybe
Thank
inspired
you.
by the words presented here before.